Good day, everyone. It's Peter Dunn, Pete the Planner, and the Pete the Planner Show is live. Oh my gosh, another week in paradise. And by paradise, I mean a global pandemic. Joining me on the program, as always, is me. What's brother in Spanish, Damien?
Brother.
My brother, Damian Dunn, joining me from Studio North. Hello, Dame.
Hey, Pete.
It's so good to be with you. We have got a good show this week. And by good, I mean, it might not be great. It's not going to be terrible, but we're not going to get dark. Like, we're not going to, people are not going to be sad when they leave the show this week. It'll be a very uplifting program. Is my shirt doing weird things on the camera? Does it look like that?
A little. I can see what you're talking about, but I think it's manageable.
Our little Facebook and YouTube roll call here. Who's with us here today? Leave it in the comments. Who's riding? Ride or die. Who's riding or dying with us today? Put it out there.
Might just be us.
Dane, what's your vibe today? Where are you at? I feel like you and I are both all business. You and I have had very busy mornings independently, and then we came together to say, hey, we had busy meetings. Is that what's your vibe right now? Vibe check.
Was entirely focused this morning, but I am starting to drift into thoughts of the weekend at this point. So I'm right on that happy medium. I'm straddling the fence.
Dame, I cannot get to the weekend until about 4:30 today. Unfortunately, but who cares? All right. So apparently no one is vibe checking. There we go. Sharon says hello. Sharon is present. I was like, okay.
Oh, there we go. Now we're going in.
Tracy's saying, what's up? What's up? What's up, Tracy? Hope you have a good weekend coming up here. Tracy, this is to you. I want to know, what's your vibe check on you? Are you ready for the weekend yet? Or are you still deep into your Friday? That's important to understand because, Dame, I'll be honest, early in my career, my weekend would start on like 10 a.m. on Fridays. I'd play golf in the afternoons, but I think as it's progressed, sometimes the vibe doesn't happen until like 8 on a Friday. All right, guys, let's go ahead and do this. Let's start the radio show. If you're joining us for the first time here on this live stream, we record our syndicated radio show right here, right now, and then we fool everyone and make them feel like it's live on the weekends in the markets of which they listen. And then we also put that on podcast for you to listen to on Tuesday. So Tracy says it's a busy Friday. Totally, Tracy. I feel you. All right, here we go. So, Dame. Oh, Sharon, retired every day is the weekend.
Oh, man.
Hey, congrats. Good for you. A lot of hard work and dedication, I'm sure, that went into that. All right, Dame, let's start the show. And what's the first topic? What are we doing? Oh, you want to do the Batnick article?
Yeah, that's what you said. The Batnick article, and then we're going to talk about pick a year.
Yeah, okay, I got it. Okay, 3, 2, 1. This week on the Pete the Planner Show, we answer your money questions. Here's how the show works. You email us, askpete@petetheplanner.com. That's askpete@petetheplanner.com, and we will, in fact, maybe, possibly, sometimes answer your question. When I say we, I mean not just a guy with a big ego, so he has to say we. I mean mi padre. Wait,
no,
my Spanish is messed up. You're not my father, Damien.
No.
What is brother in Spanish?
If only we had.
Is it hermosa?
Like hermosa? No.
Anyway, Damien, we're a financial show. We're not a Spanish show, but we do offer bilingual services at Your Money Line and Hey Money. Oddly enough, you and I are not answering those calls. It's hermosa, I think.
Hermano?
I
bet.
What's hermosa? Is that like drinking
it's champagne and apple juice.
Yeah, apple juice. Okay, Dame, here's what we're starting this week. We're not actually answering any questions. You and I both saw an article this week from a friend of the show. He's been on the show. Do you know he's been on the show before?
I did not know that.
It was before you.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Fellow bald guy, Michael Batnick, the irrelevantinvestor.com. So a piece went out in the last couple of weeks from Fidelity, a fun little infographic that described how much money someone should have set aside. And so as it relates to the retirement portfolio. And people lost their minds because, this is 2020 and people tend to lose their mind over things that are pretty innocuous on the internet. And so then what my friend, Michael did was he sort of broke it down and put some context around what we saw. So Dame, A question that you probably get a lot, and I know I do, is how much should I have saved based on how old I am in relation to my retirement portfolio? Is that a pretty common question in your parts?
It's very common, and I find that it becomes more common with the younger the person is because they're more focused on having that specific benchmark, that guideline to figure out are they on track, and so they're looking for anything that they can get their hands on to say, yeah, I'm doing all right, or I need to do a little bit of catching up.
You know who never asks is people in their 50s. They never ask if they're on track to retire because they either intrinsically sort of feel it and know that they aren't, or they simply just don't know.
Totally, they usually have that feeling, and they're usually right.
All right, so Dame, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through 5 different ages, and based on those ages, I'm going to tell you what Fidelity has figured to be how much money you would need to have set aside for retirement specifically based on what your current income is. Correct?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Do you want to start? Let's just start naturally at the youngest age they have on here at age 30. So at age 30, if you're 30 years old, according to Fidelity, you should have the equivalent of 1 year's income in your retirement plan. Okay, so Dame, if I can get more specific there, let's say you are 30 years old and you make $51,000 a year. That would mean, according to Fidelity, to be on track for retirement, you would have to have $51,000 in those assets, correct?
Math checks out. You're right.
All right, math checks out. Now, here was a lot of the issue on the internet around this Fidelity infographic. People lost their mind about that one. They said, look, millennials and the high cost of college education, and now the second recession for this group of people, and this, that, and the other thing, it's virtually impossible for a 30-year-old to have the equivalent of 1 year's income set aside. And I will say this, Dame, I agree it is very, very hard for a 30-year-old to have that. Yet you and I see that rather frequently, honestly.
There are a number of headwinds that college graduates are going to face. The student loans and potential poor job market, other decisions that they've got to make with living in potentially expensive areas of the country that could potentially make this very challenging goal to achieve for them. It is possible, but there are a lot of hard decisions that have to be made to achieve it.
I like that. You sounded really professional there for just a half second. You said a lot of headwinds.
Yeah, maybe one of our colleagues, Brent, is rubbing off on me in vocabulary and lexicon.
Hey, y'all, we've got a colleague named Brent who is in our marketing department. This guy, man, he'll just put some words together. He's not even a copywriter for us. Like, he's doing a lot of graphic stuff and some strategy. Every time he has a phrase, it's like the perfect wording. And I'm like, someday I need to install his word generator into my head. It's really a beautiful thing. All right, Dame. So let's continue on. At age 30, according to Fidelity, you should have 1 times your current income at age 30 set aside in your retirement plan in order to feel like you're on track. How about age 40, which you and I are certainly closer to than age 30? 3x. You would need to have 3 times your current income set aside in retirement funds. So let's say you are 40 years old and you're making $70,000 a year. You would need $210,000 set aside in your retirement plan to feel justified that you are still on track to retire successfully. Damon, you and I were talking just this week on a client event of ours, and we often talk about that the most difficult task anyone will ever attempt financially is to successfully retire, especially since pensions are not as popular as they used to be. And that's a pretty stunning phrase, especially in these times, Dame, because I think everyone right now, everyone's a little much. A lot of people right now feel like they are currently facing their biggest task.
Yeah, there are a number of issues that come up here, and 3 times your salary might seem like a bunch, but If you take that one number, you've got 10 years to let the age 30 double, and then you keep doing your thing. So 3 times by the time you're age 40 is maybe a little bit more reasonable than most people give it credit for.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I think arguably this gets a little bit easier as we go forward. All right. So, Dame, it also just occurred to me that there's a 0% chance this is one segment.
Yeah, we're quickly running out.
All right. So, age 50, according to Fidelity, at age 50, you should have 6 times your current income set aside in your retirement portfolio to know you are on track. So, Dame, I'm going to do some math for you. Let's say you have $100,000 income in your household. Then you would arguably, according to Fidelity, need $600,000 in your retirement portfolio at age 50. Okay, so Dame, what are your thoughts on this? I'll say, Michael Batnick's point, who wrote a blog post about this, which it turns out we're going to probably be getting to in the next segment, what his point really is. So I guess let's just hit Fidelity's side of it now. Is that reasonable? 6 times your salary at age 50?
If you're a diligent saver from the very beginning, yeah, I think it is. You go from 40 to 50, you're going to have a bunch of really tough decisions to make during that time period of your life, with potentially kids going off to college and trying to fund a whole bunch of goals. But if you look at what returns can do for you between the age of 40 and 50, it's reasonable.
Yeah, here's what I've learned from this piece, despite the fact that I've known this my entire adult life. If you start at 22 and 23, it's in the bag. It's done, baby. If you only start caring in your 30s or 40s, it turns into a grind. And that's not to say don't grind, because the alternative to not grinding and get your money away for retirement, it's much worse than what we're talking about.
Yeah, totally.
All right, so let's do this, Dame. We're up against it. Let's take a break, pay some bills. Sorry, I hate when I say that. I don't know why I continue to do it. We're going to come back. I'm going to tell you how much, according to Fidelity, you would need set aside at age 60 and then at age 67. And then we're going to talk to you about why the irrelevant investor, Michael Batnick, friend of the show, why he thinks this actually works, but what scares him the most about this infograph. All that is coming up next on the Pete the Planner Show. I'm Pete the Planner. I hit the post like I went to school for this.
It's amazing.
All right, so those on Facebook Live right now and YouTube and all those other places, what are you feeling right now? What do we got you thinking? Is this scary stuff? Do you feel like so far the 1x, 3x, 6x things are validated? Does that feel real to you, Dame? How are you overall feeling about this piece so far?
I'm okay with it, but the key that you just identified is starting early. If you start late, man, you have an uphill battle to climb.
Yeah, Sharon brings up a really interesting point here. She said that they did not get out of grad school until their mid-30s. So to say that they were behind is quite the understatement. So they had to save like crazy to get after it. How about, Dame, how about in respect to what we're going through as an economy and as a global community right now, with unemployment specifically, and how that impacts this situation? Because to me, it's not necessarily about market losses, because those come and go. This is really about not being able to put fuel into the car at this point.
Yeah, lost contributions are going to be the next challenge that most people are going to face. What that means, and I say this from not a non-caring point of view, but you may have to change your retirement plans at this point. If you can't get those contributions in when you need to get them in, well, something's got to change. Either you got to get better returns, or you need a longer time to make those contributions. So just an interest, just a way that you have to overcome some challenges.
Yeah, I have to admit, from the lives that you and I've run up against over the last decade and a half doing this particular thing, I would say that most people I come across, even most people who are doing well, are behind these markers that Fidelity is laying out. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't make them, that's the tough thing. It doesn't necessarily make it unrealistic that they're putting this out there, because the question is, what do you need to be on track? Well, this is what you need to be on track. Whether you're on track or not doesn't make it realistic or unrealistic. The question is, what does it take to be on track?
Right. If you want to know if you are preparing to retire successfully, we can't adjust those goalposts to where everybody else is. That doesn't do anybody any good unless everybody's going to have a massive change in what they consider retiring successfully. So this is where it is. Whether you like it or agree with it, that's a cause for another discussion.
Levi, friend of the show, just asked, you typically suggest using an assumed 8% growth rate, right? Well, yes and no. I would say this, Levi. Actually, how about the vice president of advice give that advice? Because he's better suited than I am to do it.
I think I would typically start around 8%, but a lot of that's going to be determined on risk tolerance and time horizon as well. So if you're going to assume an overall 8% growth rate going forward, it's reasonable. Maybe not for the next couple of years, depending on what financial pundit you want to listen to. But long-term, 8% return with a nice mix, not 100% equities, but a few bonds sprinkled in, 8% is probably reasonable to use. If you see somebody that's illustrating 10 to 12%, no.
Yeah, Dame, I would agree with you. I would say one, slightly different in one way. I would not want to illustrate over 8%, right? Like 8% to me is the absolute cap, which you essentially said, the absolute cap. I think if you're a novice investor who doesn't really pay attention that much and you're not even necessarily in the right things, it should probably be closer to 6 or so, because you're likely not in the things that would typically get you 8. Arguably, though, over time, the S&P 500 alone, even though it's currently skewed, should return between 7 to 9 over a 25 to 30 year period.
Yeah, I mean, if you are the type of person who is investing in target date portfolio inside your 401k, those returns are going to lag a little bit compared to a normal, typical type portfolio, just because of the way they're constructed. Usually, some of the fees that are involved there. So you may have to figure out a slightly lower long-term return if that's your key investment vehicle.
Segment in 3, 2, 1. Back on the Pete the Planner show. Boy, Dame, during the break, the show really heats up. Why don't we just record during the breaks and then we wouldn't have to do another segment? Because I don't think I can have anything intelligent to say for the next 9 minutes and 23 seconds.
Well, just everybody will get to listen to everything we just said again on the Facebooks.
Taking a look this week at a piece by Michael Batnick, theirrelevantinvestor.com, as he takes a look at an infographic that Fidelity put out recently, which discusses how much money you need to have saved at particular ages in relation to your current income to prove that you are on track. So we covered in the first segment, Dame, if you are 30 years old, in order to prove that you are on track to retire successfully, you would need 1 times your salary. So if you make 40 grand and you're 30 years old, you would ideally want 40 grand in your retirement investments to prove to yourself you're on track. If you're 40 years old, it's 3 times your income. At age 50, you would need to have 6 times your income to prove you are officially on track. Now, Dane, we move on to age 60. 8 times. 8 times. So let's do some numbers here. Let's say you're 60 years old and you make $50,000 a year. You would need 400,000 American dollars set aside in your retirement portfolio to be on track to retire successfully at age 67.
I find it most interesting that from 40 to 50, you need double. But from 50 to 60, it's less than double. So you're allowed a slightly more conservative portfolio, I'm guessing, in here is what we're seeing. But you got to keep making those contributions. That's going to be really important.
You know, during the break, our good friend Gordon made the point of essentially, does this include Social Security and that? Based on Fidelity's calculations, they're taking into account Social Security income at retirement, right? So they're even taking into account the Social Security income you would have, and then they're stacking on top of that these supposed assets. All right, Dame. Age 67, which for the point of this Fidelity piece is retirement age, you would need to have 10 times your retiring income. So let's say on your retirement day, you have your cake party. Everyone says they're going to miss you. And in that previous 12 months, you made $70,000. Fidelity says in order to know that everything's going to be okay, you would need to have $700,000. Dame, this one I don't actually buy. Do you?
Really?
Yeah, I struggle with that one, right? And the reason is because I've seen people successfully retire on significantly less than 10 times their final year salary.
Brings up the very interesting question: what do you consider a successful retirement? Right?
Sure, go ahead. What I mean, how do you want to spend that?
Well, some people, as we know, can make a lot of money and not need very much of it.
Yeah.
Some people can make a very modest income and they use every single penny of it from month to month for any number of reasons. Maybe their life circumstances require that, or maybe they just spend more than they should. Maybe it's a combination thereof. So 10 times your income, your final income in an account, may be more than enough for a lot of people. For other people, it may not scratch the tip of the iceberg. That doesn't make sense.
Why would you scratch the tip of the iceberg?
Maybe it likes it. Maybe
you know what did scratch the tip of the iceberg? The hull of the Titanic. That seems morose.
You said we weren't going to go there today, Pete.
I'm sorry, everybody. That was rude. You know what? I'm sorry. That was rude. I never want to be in a position to have to make public apologies, and that was one.
But
here we are. Okay, here was Michael Batnick's point. Okay, so the whole reason we're having this discussion today, because the irrelevantinvestor.com, Michael Batnick said, I first looked at this and I was like, no way. He's basically doing kind of what we're doing, but then he decided to run a bunch of data on it. So here's what he figured out. A, this is incredibly realistic. B, like we said, this is incredibly realistic if you start in your 20s. And C, this all falls apart really quickly if you have massive increases in income along the way. What we've just discussed, and this sort of blew my mind until I thought about it for a half second. What he's saying is if you have 2.5% on average wage increases throughout your career, which actually works out to a nice wage increase in the end, but if it's sort of steady that way, you can do this. This all makes sense. Fidelity's right. However, if you have a huge pay jump, or a good example of this is, let's say you are in commission sales and you just get better and better and better at your job, but by huge leaps, as commission salespeople sometimes do, this falls apart really quickly, Dane, because of lifestyle creep.
Yeah, lifestyle creep is a big chunk of it, but also if you stay in one tier, for example, for that first 10 years, and then you have a huge jump in salary, well, you've been saving at a certain rate for a certain salary those first 10 years, not your new salary as well. So you're playing catch up from the jump. As soon as you get that big salary increase or that big wage increase, you've got to make up for a little bit of lost time with the savings that you've already done as well. So you can't keep that same rate necessarily and expect to come out where you were on track for.
You know what I think some people do? Did I ever tell you my Weatherman story? I had to have told you my Weatherman story. So there was a weatherman that was at a local station who I was friendly with, still friendly with, and he was thinking about retiring. And so he decided, just in discussions with him in the newsroom one day, that the best approach for him was to turn up the risk in the last 5 to 10 years of his retirement, because he was falling short of the retirement goals and his retirement age really mattered to him. And so he said, well, what do you think about this? Naturally, there are a few different ways to get toward your goal if one of the factors is struggling. He didn't have enough capital, right? So he needed to either retire later or save more or increase his rate of return to still accomplish his hard goal, which was age-based. So he's like, what do you think? Well, Dame, it's obvious what I think. And it's obvious what you think. Turning up your risk for most people, especially at the end of the conversation, is not the way to go.
You can't jeopardize your goal by changing a factor like your risk that late in the game, because you could just as easily force yourself to work longer because you experience a couple really bad years in the market and returns, that you don't have a choice but to work longer anyway. So I would much rather see somebody play it conservatively at that point, bite the bullet, work an extra year, or maybe just work part time for a few years after that and reduce the demand that you have on your savings to get into that retirement phase.
Yeah. So here's what we're going to do. Damon, the next segment, we're going to talk about a trick that has been around in financial planning as long as financial planning has been around as to how to solve this whole problem. Really, it cuts a lot out. But I also, before we get there though, I want to tell people, if you are not on track according to Fidelity, you got a couple different options. Number one, it doesn't take into account that you start eliminating obligations as you get closer to retirement. The assumption that it makes is that you always live at the same income level and you always need that money. Here's the thing, Dame, 10 years from now, you and I've talked about this, 10 years from now, I need a lot less money than I need right now. I'm still in the midst of paying off our home. I got 2 very expensive children in terms of trying to fund their college and all their activities. And from time to time to get them to stop talking so I can think straight and not go crazy, right? 10 years from now, none of those are an issue. House is paid off, kids are in college, so on and so forth. So this idea that at age 42, I need to have whatever times my income now to deal with later is, it doesn't make sense. So coming up after the break, more on this and that. I'm Pete the Planner. This is the show. You didn't think I was going to hit it, did you?
I had my doubts.
They're justified. I think within the last 2 weeks, I S the bed.
Wow.
I didn't say the word. Lots of great comments here on Facebook. Thank you very much, a lot of you. So I want to just hit some of them during the breaks here. Hello, Angela. It definitely brings awareness regardless of where someone happens to be in the retirement savings plan. So many people have no idea about benchmarks. Agree. That's why I think it's a great question when people ask us. It's tough to quantify. And Dame, you and your team have this conversation a lot, and you're able to talk through all the things that you and I've just talked through the last 20 minutes. But it's never an easy answer. If all you see is the graph and you go, well, it's 3x at this age, it's both helpful, but it needs a lot more context.
If you don't have an idea of how much you're going to need in retirement, how much you should have saved is almost pointless.
Yeah, I agree. Here's a good question. I don't know if we'll have time to hit it today, but we will hit it in the future. Moffat asks, I'm 73 and still working, small business owner. I believe that's pronounced business, Moffat. We put our 3 kids through college, no loans. CDs were wonderful. Now trying to put my grandchildren through college. Hope I can get them through with no loans. Doing the college 539. That's similar to a 529, but not as good as the CDs of the 70s. What's the best way to go? You know what, Dame, can we try to hit that question at the end of the next segment? Because I think it's a really good question.
Sure.
Okay, we're going to try. Dan's is not feeling it. Dan's, it's okay. We're going to get through this together. And here's the thing. You can't let those benchmarks get you down, because if you are, efforting towards retirement by reducing obligations and saving what you can, as long as the numbers work out, they work out. Forget the benchmarks from time to time. Big jump in salary helped us a lot, says Sharon. We just put the increases into savings. That's the way to do it. We were very lucky that we just didn't have a desire for lots of luxuries. So it never felt like we were depriving ourselves or our kid. Amazing point, Dame. As you and I've learned, even between the two of us, some people have a taste for the finer things and choose to spend money on them. And that's a problem, because if you don't have those particular tastes, that's quite the advantage as you try to prepare for retirement.
A few people I've talked to fairly recently have made very nice incomes, but live very modest lifestyles. And it is easy for them to be savers and accumulators. And they get to the end of the game and they're just like, well, it worked out all right. What do I do?
Danza does point out that it's really no surprise that my children are chatterboxes. Oh, you have no idea. You really have no idea. The other night, Ted, who's 8, told Mrs. Planner and I a joke. We gave him the, all right, buddy. And he said, did you not hear me correctly? He was so sure that his joke was a stunner. He dropped an adverb on us. Ted is good with adverbs. Who knew? All right, Dame. I got to restart the segment. And we'll be ready to go here. All right. We're going to continue. What are we doing? Oh, the secret to making this all work. And then we're going to try to hit that other question from Moffat. Okay. Unless it's French. Is it Moffat? I don't know. 3, 2, 1. Back on the Pete the Planner show. If you're just joining us, we're in the 3rd segment. What have you been doing? Sorry, that seems a little judgmental. Damian Dunn is here. I'm Peter Dunn. We're not related. Have we ever done any research like on the old family tree to see if we're in the same family tree? Have we done that?
No, I offered a 23andMe test, but you said no.
You offered to take my blood, you vampire.
It was for a good cause.
Here, Pete, I need your DNA. It's like, I've seen several movies. I'm not doing that.
For the show.
For the show. I don't want to do that. I feel like, because if I commit a crime someday and then they've got my DNA and okay, Dame. So in the previous segment, we talked about Fidelity's benchmarks revolving around how much you need to have set aside by whatever age to retire at age 67. I want to shortcut this whole process and give you a financial planning trick that has been used for decades. It really is one of the first things I ever learned in the business back in the late 90s. And it is also a beautiful, overused, but now rarely used metaphor. And it revolves around defining your destination. Like, what year are you retiring? If you don't have a retirement date or even year, what are you doing? Right? Because you have to work backward on that math to make it work. Like, and I'm not asking people to walk around self-identifying as a person who's going to retire at 63 or 71. I don't care about any of that. Keep it to yourself. But how in the world, Dame, can you possibly do financial planning, which is just math, if you don't know when you've transitioned from accumulation phase to distribution phase? Dame, how does anyone do it without that?
Retirement planning is an incredibly complex process because of all the variables that are included in coming up with a reasonably solid financial plan. It only goes to your benefit to try and identify some of the things that you can control, which would be the date of retirement is first and foremost. So if you can figure out when that date is, or at least when you think you want it to be, then the planner or yourself, if you choose to go that route, can start doing the math backwards and figuring out what's it going to take to get the amount of money I need by that date. Now, if it gets there a little bit faster, fantastic. If you need to wait a little while and accumulate some more, you'll know that too. You'll have the idea and the information that you need to prepare for successful retirement.
So, Dame, it turns out that I like to plan every aspect of my life. I don't know if you knew this.
Oh?
Yeah. And it really tortures everyone around me. Coworkers, colleagues like you, my life partner, Mrs. Planner. And it's awful. Like, for instance, we're going on a date tonight. And so for the entire week, I've been menu scouting a restaurant that I've been to a tremendous number of times and could recite their menu to you, but I just stare at it probably 13 to 19 times a day. And I've been refreshing the menu today, just for some reason. I just keep looking at it. So I plan everything, including what I'm going to eat tonight at 7:15 and the cocktail I will order when I sit down. Dame, so for me to say you would never go on a vacation not knowing where your destination is and when you'll get there, that's a reasonable thing for someone like me to say. But there are people out there that say, no, I just like the spontaneous nature. Let's just see where it goes. I don't want to be friends with that person. Dame, you can't go on a family across the country vacation not knowing when you're getting to a particular destination because that's where you're going to sleep for the night. You have to know the end information to calculate the rest of it. It's the same thing with retirement planning. That is the metaphor that has existed in our industry for 30, 40 years easily, that has once again gotten forgotten, but it's beautiful.
I think I would push back on the family vacation thing, not knowing where you're going to stay that night. You've never just started saying, okay, we're going to go from here to there, but we're going to have to sleep over somewhere. And depending on the temperament of the kids or just my ability to deal any longer, maybe we stop 50 miles shorter than we planned on it. You've never done that?
A couple things. Let me tell you. The pro tip is actually to drop your family in one town and then you keep going and stay somewhere else. Number two, we have done that. I guess what I should say is the final destination.
Okay.
Okay. So we all know where you're staying, your VBRO or whatever. I don't know what that is. Mrs. Planner is in charge of that stuff. Dame, would it surprise you that there are some elements of my life that I have no idea how anything works because we have different assignments and tasks in our house, and I have no idea how some things that are pretty logistic don't work.
If I'm being perfectly honest here in front of dozens of people, there's some things I don't want you worrying about or taking care of. I want Mrs. Planner handling those things for everybody's benefit.
Oh my gosh, I know. You know what? To this point, though, and of course, we always broadcast on Facebook Live on Fridays at noon as we record the show, as we broadcast it to you on the weekends or for the podcast. Good friend for several decades of mine, Nick, comments on Facebook. And it's a really good question, Damon. I put it to you. Have you found any evidence that more spontaneous people have any or more or less difficulty saving? Of course, this will be anecdotal evidence because we don't think we've done official research on that. But go ahead, Dame. What do you think?
Anecdotally, yeah, I think spontaneous people typically have a bigger problem saving if they don't have it systematized. If they've got it set up to where it's a automatic deduction, like a 401k contribution, or it automatically goes into an IRA and they live off the rest, then they've got a pretty good shot at getting their goal. But if it's requiring them to make that transaction each and every month or every couple months or every year or whatever it is, the money may not be there because they are living life in the moment and they're trying to take advantage of everything that they can. So spontaneous people can struggle with this if they don't take the steps they need to make sure it's out of their hands.
Now, I have to say I am a spontaneous spender, and I've definitely gotten better at that over the years. And by better at that, I mean less spontaneous spending. But to Nick's point here, and Damien, maybe to your point, the way I can justify that and still achieve what I want to achieve financially is because I TCB. I take care of business first. I fund our goals fully. And then whatever we spend after that, it doesn't actually matter. I mean, here, I've written a couple books on budgeting and we talk about budgeting all the time. But Damien, here's the way I budget. I save 100% to the goals to fund them appropriately. We promise not to go in debt. So then whatever else we spend doesn't actually matter. It doesn't impact us.
It's kind of the goal of budgeting, isn't it?
Yes.
You just manage to take care of everything up front, and whatever's left over, you're free to do whatever you want with. So whether you're the type of person that needs to budget every single penny and you take care of things as they come throughout the month, fantastic, good on you. But if you're going to take something like Pete's method, just make sure everything is covered up front, and then you do whatever you want on the backside. That is fine.
I think people use this method that I'm describing quite a bit, but where they fall short is that they don't actually know how to properly fund. They don't hit the right level. And Dame, it's all based on this idea we're talking about in this segment. They don't choose their retirement age. And unless you choose your retirement age, which sounds boring and unnecessary, especially if you just entered the workforce and you're like 25 years old, why would I look 40 years ahead when I just started? It's so that you can spend whatever you want once you've taken care of business. That's why.
Take care of yourself. Identify some very basic things. It doesn't mean it can't change later if you want it to, but you'll be aware of the changes that are going to have to happen to make sure you stay on track. So do the legwork up front and reap the benefits in the long run.
And yes, it's math. And yes, as our Slack exchange yesterday morning validated, Dame, there are some variables that can really mess this up.
Sure.
Inflation rate, all sorts of things. But I'll say this. There's really no excuse why any of us can't know exactly what we need to set aside every single month. And whether you decide to do it, it's between you and the man in the mirror at that point, or the lady in the mirror, or however the person in the mirror in front of you appears, right?
Yeah, be honest with yourself. That's going to be pretty key to, well, a lot of things in life, but be honest with yourself.
I feel like the show just almost took a turn into like a real self-help situation.
Almost.
All right, Dame, coming up after the break, what are we? Oh my gosh, we're in the fourth segment already. Biggest waste of money of the week. We've got a doozy this week. It's a really good one. And more frivolity, current events, and we've kept it pretty happy this week. 2 weeks in a row. Maybe 3 weeks in a row that we've kept it interesting. I'm Pete the Planner. This is the show. Okay, so now that we're back on just Facebook Live and YouTube with people, my man Nick Saligo. All right, Dame, you ready for it? Do you know his alter ego, Dame?
Based on his little picture there, I think I do, but I couldn't tell you the exact name. I'm pretty sure I know who it is, but
So here's the thing, guys. Nick Saligo is kind of a big deal. And we grew up a street away. We went to school together. He's younger, of course. Also a ginger, not oddly enough. He's a big deal. Stage name DJ Metronome. Sort of a big deal. So in the DJ community, the live DJing community, not only is he a big deal, does a lot of stuff through like Red Bull events and hosts a lot of events. He owns a DJ school called Decademics that teaches people how the art of DJing. Every Tuesday night during the pandemic, they've hosted something on Twitch. It was on Instagram at first, but then on Twitch called Take That Tuesdays. They've been doing that event for a very long time, live and in person. But when we switched to the pandemic, my man took it online. And Dame, you know me well enough to know I'm not going out to a bar at 10 p.m. on any other night, but I can lay in bed as I begin to see the inside of my eyelids and listen to Take That Tuesday with DJ Metronome. Is that a good endorsement for me to say, I love him because he puts me to sleep?
Here's what I know. If we don't have him do a class for the next reunion we have,
God,
I am so upset.
All right. Hey, Nick, I will text you. We're doing that. Next time our entire crew is in town, when we fly people in, can we do an event at Decademics? All right. Go ahead, decademics.com, decademics.com. Awesome stuff. And you can take courses online, I believe, too. If you can't, well, there you go, Nick. You have a new online program. All right, Dame, let me reset the next segment and get ready to go here. Okay, hold on. What is going on? All right, we're back, right?
Looks like it.
Okay. Can you pull up some current events? Just have them ready to go.
Sure.
All right. 3, 2, 1. This week's biggest waste of money of the week right here on the Pete the Planner Show is every week, the BWOM, BWOM, biggest waste of money is some item or service that, well, is a little intense. Today, it's the world's most expensive potato chip, and it runs you $15 per chip. Now, Dame, a bag of potato chips is, of course, one of the cheapest snacks you can buy. That is, unless you opted for the extremely limited edition set of chips from Swedish brewery St. Erik's. That's Eric with a K, which that's a whole other thing. Boxed in an absurdly fancy package made from absurdly special ingredients. So, Dame, here are the 5 flavors. There's 5 chips to a gift pack. It comes in, you get 5 chips, and it's $75 for 5 chips. Here's what you get. The first flavor is matsutake, which, of course, is one of the world's most sought-after species of mushrooms. You knew that.
Of course.
Did you know that? No. Okay. Should I admit that I knew that?
I think we all knew you knew that.
If I want to be a man of the people, shall I admit that I knew that? Anyway, matsutake is flavor number 1. Number 2, truffle seaweed. Well, that's pretty understandable, right? Number 3, crown dill. The crown dill used was handpicked on I can't pronounce that word, BJARE, with like 4 different European symbols over the letters. The Bjari Peninsula in southern Sweden, and selected for its fresh yet powerful flavor. So far we've got matsutake, truffle seaweed, crown dill. Flavor number 4, Dame, is Lexington onion. It's a specific.
Yeah, got that at IKEA, I think.
Probably. And then number 5 is India Pale Ale wort. I know what that is. I just never thought that would be put on a chip.
Where's the barbecue?
Isn't that sad that there's $75 for 5 chips and there's not a barbecue chip?
That's criminal.
They're made from a specific type of potato called the, oh boy, Amaranthus, a steep, stony slope in a south-facing location where almond potatoes are cultivated in very limited numbers. Wow. So, Dame, about 20 years ago, I got home from work around 4 p.m. because that's how I used to roll. And I turned on Oprah Winfrey because I like to watch the Oprah Winfrey show about 20 years ago. And I'm watching Oprah, and Oprah's on there, and she said, it was something about like indulgences or something. And she said, y'all, this is the way Oprah said, whoo! She said, my favorite indulgence is just to sit at home on my couch and eat an entire bag of potato chips at once. And Dame, it was in that moment that I thought I married the wrong person. Like, because Miss Planner would not eat a chip, but Oprah and I, we would have been like have a deep-seated relationships based on chips, because I can sit and eat chips, but for $75 for 5 chips, I would be broke.
You get through that 5 chips really quick, though. I mean, you get on with your day.
Dame, there's a trend in the wedding space these days where couples are telling people essentially what to buy them on their wedding invitations, including recently a couple's wedding RSVP allegedly offers better meals for guests who give expensive gifts. Dame, what in the world? I've actually seen something like this where, and it was always very passive aggressive. They would give you the wedding registry, but the lowest priced item on the wedding registry was like $100 or $250. So you couldn't buy them like a $7 spatula and say, good luck. You'd have to buy them like a silver tea set or something crazy like that.
What is going on? Was it last week we had the Christmas gift exchange that was no less than $200? Was that last week?
Yeah, that was in the last couple of weeks. That was wild. I told that story more than once this week, by the way.
This is insane. And gosh, it drives me nuts. Stuff like this.
Also this week, it is worth noting that more details on Vice President Biden, or I guess candidate Biden, I never know what to call people. Joe Biden?
Joe.
For his call to overhaul the 401k tax breaks. I finally dug into it this week to understand it a little bit more than I had understood it. Did you have the chance to do the same?
I had read the article prior, or another article prior to the one that you shared, and I read this one as well. So I think I've got a reasonably good idea of what's going on.
Okay, so correct me when I'm wrong.
Okay.
You notice I didn't say correct me if I'm wrong. I said when I'm wrong, because I will get this wrong. So as it stands now, if you use the traditional 401k benefit as opposed to the Roth, you deduct your contributions off of your taxable income in the tax year. So I'm going to use big round numbers. Let's say you have $100,000 income and you put $18,000 in the 401k that year, then you're only being taxed on $82,000. Correct, Dame?
Correct.
And if you make $50,000 and you only contribute $3,000 to the 401k that year, then your taxable income only goes down to $47,000. And one of the concerns about this, according to the Biden campaign and some other people too, is that that is unfair to lower income earners because they get less advantage because they're able to save less. And it's the people who make higher incomes that need that tax advantage less. It should actually go more to the people who need the tax advantage more. Correct? Are we so far so tracking?
Yeah, I think it has more to do with the tax rate that's going to be levied against the remaining taxable income than how much is being contributed, but that is a portion of it.
So what this bill, it's not even a bill. It's a proposal. I feel like I'm going to have to watch an after school special. I'm just a bill to figure that out. Anyway, it's a proposal that would turn, instead of a tax deduction, it would turn it into a tax credit. And so what that does is it evens the playing field by bringing up the tax advantage for people on the lower end. And oddly enough, in the example they gave in the piece, it actually slightly increases the tax advantage for the people on the higher end, but at least it increases the people on the bottom end more. And so where at first, when I read this proposal, I thought, well, there's very little chance anything in the retirement industry gets passed because the retirement lobby is pretty thick and there's no way you can get anything through. But once I read that, Dame, it has more of a chance to pass than I originally thought.
You think so?
More than I originally thought.
Okay. I still think there's slim chance that this type of change happens. I'm certainly in favor of moving from a deduction to a credit, but I'm not sure the structure of this is going to pan out like the campaign would hope.
You know what it strikes me more than anything here, when the federal government, I was just going to say arguably, but it's sort of hard to argue against this, needs funding more than ever before to not only pay for current programs, but future programs and the giant debt that we have. I think throwing around something like this that means less tax revenue for the government seems problematic to me.
It seems like if they were going to get really serious about some of the debt that we carry, that they would just do away with the traditional side and make everything Roth. Pay it up front. We'll give it to you, give you your free ride going forward.
Do you remember a couple of years ago when they were going to change the 529 tax benefit? And then there's always talk that the Roth structure will change someday. I'm still not convinced that the Roth doesn't get robbed someday of its tax advantage because of our country's struggles.
I hope it doesn't, but nothing would surprise me these days.
Is that not the most true statement of the day?
Sadly.
All right, Dane. Well, thanks for being on the show this week. I mean that because I enjoy being with you, and it is part of your job description. So, Dame, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. Thanks to all of you for watching as well on Facebook Live and for listening on whatever radio station you're listening on. Hello to all of you, and of course the podcast, which you can get at wherever you get podcasts. I'm Pete the Planner. This is the show. Sending you good vibes because good vibes are all the budget. See you next week. I think I flubbed that last line.
Yeah, that's all right.
What if we just lost a major nationally syndicated opportunity because I can't close a show out?
Well, you'll be
still here with you next week.
Yeah.
Oh, damn. All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming back. It's good. I love hanging out with you every Friday. All the regulars, all the newbies, Levi, Danza, Daniel, Jameson, Betty makes it from time to time. Thank you so much, everybody. Hope you have a good weekend. This was an interesting week in our country. Thursday was a pretty rough day for a lot of people. So I hope you keep your head up, keep looking for the positives out there where they legitimately exist, and be part of the change. If you don't like something, be the change. So we'll see you next time. I'm Pete the Planner. That's Damian Dunn. No relation. See you later.